Hello viewers, this is part 2 section 1 of my Yamaha Warrior restoration video. Part 2 section 2 is going to be the clutch. I figured I'm going to divide those two things into separate videos because most of you are probably just clicking on this video to see how you do a timing chain replacement and a top end. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to get in here and it's pretty tight. Take this cover off here so we can see the timing chain. It's pretty loose. I've never had one of these apart before, so it'll be a learning experience. Last one I took down this far was a Yamaha blaster engine. Which is, wasn't too bad. Alright. I did put a head on a Timberwolf engine, which is a 250, which is very similar to this engine. Can I get the chain to come off this baby? Yep. There's a little pin in here, so you don't want to lose that for the key. So I'm just going to go ahead and, now that we got the chain off, I'm just going to put this back. So nothing gets lost. That's kind of what happened with the Warriors. I've now forgotten where everything goes when I think about it. I don't know if this is the original top end or not. The bike's a 1987, so who knows what's been done to it over the years. Okay. Now we switch over to our 14mm. Probably have some longer ones and some shorter ones. Yeah. Very long bolts. These. Yeah, you got two different lengths for these longer ones. But it should be pretty apparent where they go. Just gotta work it off the guide pin in there. Goes. There's the cylinder head. Came off with the gasket. Don't see anything worth writing home about inside here. Quite a bit of carbon. Probably clean that off before we put it back on. Not much of a ridge at the top. So it's definitely been in there for a minute, but not for a long time. The top of the cylinder piston, or the top of the piston, looks good. So this, alright, I got this one last bolt out. Now this should come loose. It's probably on some guide pins again. Just Just have to work it loose. So pay special attention. So it would be, if you were looking straight at it, it would be the top left has got an oil seal on it. Here and down here. And it also had this alignment pin. And I'm assuming this is feeding oil, or this is an oil return for the oil that gets sent up to the camshafts in the head. And I'm sure it drains back down through here. So pay attention to that when you put this back together, that you got your O-ring in there and stuff so it doesn't leak on you. Alright, so now that we got the top end off, we got to get these side covers off here, and then take off the flywheel, or yeah, whatever you want to call it, the things that are attached to the end of the crankshaft on the outside of the case. I'm going to try to remember which one I took off first, which was this one just below where the wiring comes out for the stator. So I'm sure a lot of these are going to be different lengths. So I'll put them all in order right here. Super short one. All kinds of different sizes going on. Longer one. Long one. Short one. Long one. Maybe I do have to take this off first. There's some more bolts hidden inside here. Oh, that's just strictly the recoil. So let's put all the bolts with it and set this off to the side. We got our special puller tool, and what we're going to want to do is find the crank bolt somewhere. Not sure where it is. It's laying around here somewhere. Here we are. So we need this crank bolt right here. And we just want to screw this in without the washer. We just want to screw this in so we don't risk damaging our threads inside here with our puller. Now, this puller, it said it's like 35 millimeter right here. I have one that works on a Yamaha blaster. When I originally pulled this apart, I just assumed it would work on this too, but this has a whole different thing going on. So we gotta screw this baby back all the way. Really far out. That's as far out as it goes. Now we want to engage these threads here. We want to screw it on all the way until it stops. You don't want to just catch a couple threads and then pull, because you might end up pulling the threads off this magneto wheel here, and then you'll be in trouble. So we thread that on all the way until it stops. Now let's get an impact gun. If you have like an impact gun, that'd probably be the most useful, because that'll turn this without spinning the whole crank around. If you just try turning this with a wrench, you're going to have a hard time, because you're going to have to hold this from turning while you turn that. You know what I mean? Oh, that baby was on there. I was getting nervous. Try not to set this in the oil. That's why you want to thread that on all the way, because that could have very easily pulled the threads if you didn't have it fully engaged. Okay, now there's we call this a Woodruff key, a crank key, moon key. You got this key in the crank, you don't want to lose that. Now this should just slide right off here. Oop. There's a bearing and a washer. So let's keep this together. Alright. Now you can look down in there and you can see your the sprocket on for the timing chain. So we should be able to just pull this out of here. Yep. There's the old chain. Didn't say anything on it. Now, you want to I'll get the camera in here so you can take a look at what's going on. There's your sprocket. This is your timing tensioner / guide here. So we're gonna have to look online and see what the how you get this to top dead center. I do see an arrow up here. See that? And there's a dot. So maybe that's top dead center. Getting ready to put the new timing chain in. But before we do that, I need to get this top end put back together. And I just got my new piston rings in the mail. So what you want to do before you put new rings in there is hone your cylinder. You're putting cross hatches in it. I don't know if I can get a good shot of these or not. Let's see if you can see yeah. So you just kind of want to rough up the cylinder in a cross hatch pattern. You want, you know, lines going like this and lines going like that. Now if you have your own hone, you know, you don't want to just stick it in there and hold it. You want to keep moving it in and out pretty quickly, because you want those lines to be like this and not like basically just going around and around. You want them to go up and then back down, you know? Maybe, maybe not. Anyway, it's a good thing we're changing this timing chain, because it was loose in there and this tensioner is out all the way. So that one definitely needed to be done. Now, I've already ordered a new gasket set for this thing a while ago. And I was just noticing that there looks like there's a rubber O-ring right here. It looks like I might have one in this kit. So I'm going to go ahead and replace that rubber O-ring. And then get the new jug gasket out. Put this back on the cylinder once we get the new rings on. To pick the old O-ring out, and we'll put this new one in here. It just slides in this little groove here. just like that. Okay, so I pulled all the old rings off and I paid attention to what was where, but it's pretty easy to figure it out because I laid all these out in order at which they go on. So this first one here is the top compression ring, and it's actually the thinner because you got two compression rings. The thicker one is the one that goes down a notch, so 1, 2. Now this part confused me because a lot of times when you're rebuilding an engine and you get some piston rings, they'll put like a dot right here near the gap, and I'll let you know that dot faces up so you don't put the ring in upside down. So I had to do a little Google research because these do have a marking on there. If you can see that, it says RN. So I'm just going to put that facing up. That one says RN. This one just says R, and it's a little bit more tricky to see. There, it says R. Tricky to see. So I guess that's supposed to be facing up as far as the diagram I seen. But I just did like a generic Google search of, you know, Yamaha Warrior 350 piston ring orientation. Some random website showed me a diagram, so I went with it. Okay, so you got, like, this is basically these three are your oil control ring, and they all go in the same groove. So you got a really thin ring, this wavy one called the oil ring expander, and then another one on the bottom. So we're gonna pop these on now. I think they do make a tool that you stick in that gap and it spreads it apart and you can drop it down. I don't have one of those, so I'm just gonna have to be real delicate with this to not, you know, bend them. But I got all the old ones off without bending those, so I think it can be done. Also, now, important thing when you're doing this is you got to pay attention to where you orientate these gaps. So I went online and found, and I believe this is just a generic ring gap. It was supposed to be for a Warrior, but seems like this is pretty much from what I can understand, from what I was looking at, just like this is how people put rings in any kind of engine that's like this. So basically, you got your top ring, and your top ring compression ring gap goes on the right there, say on the right. The second ring goes on the left, so they're facing away from each other, the gaps. So this one will go like this. That one's gonna go like that. Now your top oil control ring, that one's gonna go over here at like about 7 o'clock, and your expansion ring gap here, there's a gap in it, so there it is. That one's gonna go over here somewhere between like 2 and 4 o'clock. It gave me a range. And then your bottom oil control gap is gonna go up here at like 11 o'clock. So that's how they're all going. And so make sure these two are facing the right direction. I don't know, as far as I can tell, nobody talked about there being a right way upside down or not for these, so as far as what I understand, it doesn't matter, but it might. So maybe do your own research just in case I'm wrong. Rings, this has a standard size bore, and that's the part number for Yamaha standard size bore rings. Don't overly stretch it or anything. With it. Oops. Ultimately, you really just don't want to get all your gaps lined up with each other, because then you might have an issue. Yeah. Okay, I've oiled the cylinder with just some motor oil to help it slide together, and there's this little shim that goes here, a dowel, whatever you want to call it, and it has an O-ring around it, and I had a new O-ring in my kit. At least I think it had an O-ring around it, so it only makes sense to me. Alright, so I got my new base gasket on here. Now I'm just going to try to sneak this cylinder back on. Alright, we've gotten down the first one. Just being real careful. Let's pop back out. Not forcing it, because you don't want to chip one of these rings if it doesn't want to go. Use my little screwdriver to help push the rings together a little bit so I don't pinch my fingers. Just keep a little bit of down pressure on it. Oh, I keep slipping out of the... There it goes. Okay, I got past the two compression rings. Now I just need to get down the oil control rings. Which I think I'm pretty much over them. Try twisting a little bit. Don't want to go. I'm going to use these head bolts to hold everything in line while I put this down. Make sure my gaskets and everything stay in place. I guess the upside to a 4-stroke engine is if this thing just leaks a little oil, that's all there is to it. It's not going to be sucking vacuum like a 2-stroke and causing you to go lean all the time. But we still don't want any oil leaks if we can avoid it. I mean, I've accepted in my mind that it's going to leak, but hopefully it don't leak that bad. I'm going to throw this timing chain in there before I put the head on. Maybe it'll be easier to fish it up through. But there's the part numbers and stuff on it. It's a Wiseco brand timing chain. I mean, I'm willing to go for some cheap parts once in a while, but only on stuff that's not going to ruin my engine if it goes bad. So as far as the timing chain goes, I'd rather have a nice one. So here we are, brand new timing chain. And before we actually try to start this engine, we're going to make sure we oil this chain down real good. But for now, I'm just going to get it started. Oh, drop it. I took the tensioner out just to make this a little easier. So let's drop it through. Make sure we get it on the right side of that tensioner. Actually, I don't think we're going to be able to drop it through. We're going to have to go through the bottom first. Get it in here first. Then let's see if we can. If you had like a hook or something, that'd be easy to pull it up through with. Some kind of a hook. I got it, but I don't got it. Yep. There we are. Go on that one, can't have that. I got the cylinder at top dead center right now, and I'll show you the indication marks inside here. Alright, so if you look at this inside the cam hole here, you'll see this shaft, and there's a little pin. You want to make sure that that's in there when you have your sprocket on. And here's the sprocket, and it's got a little dash right here, and that's supposed to line up with this little notch right here on this casting, so you know that the cylinder head's basically set to top dead center as well. And when I was looking online, it looked like there's a couple different versions of these sprockets, but it seems like this key slot right here is also right in line with where you need to line up that notch. So I got the sprocket off, so I'm gonna set this up on here and try to work all this stuff on without dropping the chain and starting all over again. So I got a hold of the chain. Make sure your tensioners are on the right side of the chain. Now we need to get this started. Hand stuck in there. Grab a hold of this chain so I can. There we are. Now, make sure our tensioners are in the right position. They look happy. Just a little bit. That one's weird. I don't know why this one's not going down. Whatever. This is probably the most finicky part about the whole job. But you really just don't want to screw this up, because you don't want to be putting your valves into the piston when you go to start it. Now before I even start this, I'm going to roll this over by hand just to make sure I did get it right, because you never know. There we go. That's on. My crank move? Oh, my crank moved over. Shoot. Alright, I went ahead and torqued my head down to 30 foot-pounds. And I just kept going around in X pattern about a quarter turn at a time until I hit 30. Now I'm going to put this auto tensioner back in. So it's pretty cool how it works. It's got like a little, I don't know what you want to call that, spring-loaded stop on there. So as over time, as the timing chain stretches, it lets out a little bit more, a little bit more, and a little bit more, but it can only go out. It can't go back in because this thing stops it from going back in. But if you manually push that stop up, you can then slide it back in yourself. So to put this back in, it's spring loaded. Here's the spring, and it just screws into here on the outside. So you take that spring out, then you can push this back in. Your gasket kit probably comes with a new gasket for that. And then we can put that in, and then once we put the spring in, it'll put tension on that chain, and then we can make our final checks to make sure we got the timing chain on straight. So let me put all that back on, and we'll check out our marks. Alright, let's go over these timing marks. So I rotated the engine over a handful of times. Feels like it's got pretty good compression. I didn't feel anything stop me from being able to turn it, which would indicate a valve in the piston situation. So if you look down at the crank here, you will see that dot. And basically you want to line that dot up with that little triangle right there stamped in the case. So you just kind of see how that dot's in between the two sprocket teeth. So you just kind of put that there. Basically is what I'm trying to say. You just line that dot up with that triangle. And up here you have a line in your cam gear, and it lines up right with that. Also, like, if your sprocket looks different, from what I could tell online, you can see that the slot right there for that pin, that's also in line with that. So you should be able to figure it out. Basically, how I was adjusting it is before I had that on the shaft, I kind of had it drop down a little bit so I could get some slack in the chain, and I would just move it over a tooth down here because that was easier than trying to move the chain on the sprocket up here. Alright, then I put my new tensioner on, or that's not a new tensioner, I put the tensioner back on, and my chain's nice and tight. Which I will say, before I took this apart, I reached in here and this chain was really loose, the old one. And I thought this broke, because that actually happened to me on that Timberwolf. I got it all back together and this thing basically broke, and the chain went loose. But that looks like it's functioning perfectly fine, so I think the old chain was just wore out. It's stretched. So now all I got to do is put the various gears and flywheels back up in here, put that cover back on. Probably, I'm pretty sure I got a new gasket for it in that kit. And then this side should be done. And then I can end this video, and then the next one I'll start on the clutch, which should be a little bit more straightforward. So it's been a few days since I've tore this apart, so I'm kind of struggling to remember how everything goes now. So we got this. Oh, just dropped my roller bearings. Are they okay? Yes. Don't drop your roller bearings. So this has got like this big side on it here, and then over here it's got a smaller deal in the center, and I think that the smaller part goes in. Where's that little shim I just had? So this shim goes on here first, and then I think this is the one-way clutch for your starter, and that goes on. Okay. What else do we got? We got this magneto wheel. Big thick washer. Where's that going? And you got your little key here, your moon key or whatever you want to call it. You got to put that back in. I feel like I'm forgetting something in here, but I'm not sure. Now we push this on without kicking that key out. It's this, I bet, yeah. This is the one-way clutch right in here. So that goes back on. We need to make sure we don't knock that key out. Yep. Knock the key out. So we'll be playing games with this for a while, I have a feeling. Alright, it's time to put the magnet cover back on, or whatever you want to call this, magnetos, the cover with the magnets. But put a new gasket on it. It's got two guide pins, one here and one here. I put those in the cover to help hold the gasket on straight. I guess it doesn't matter, you could also put the gasket on this part too. Now, if you look at this, if you look behind here, you can barely see, but there's that starter clutch wheel we put in. And to check to see if that's working, like, you can turn this flywheel independently of it forward, because when this engine's running, you don't want that spinning because it'll be spinning your starter. But if you try to turn it backwards, all those little clutch things that's on the back side of this grab, and you start turning that, it locks it into that gear. So that seems to be working fine. Now on this little gear here, if you end up pulling that out, mine had a shim right here on top of this gear. I made a diagram of this, and then I had a shim stuck to the cover, which I assume goes right here above this snap ring. That's how mine came apart. I'm pretty sure this engine's been torn apart before, so that may or may not be accurate. But I'm just going to put it back together the way it came apart for me. So let's get this, get these magnets back on here. Okay. Try not to drop our dowels down in there. And hopefully our gasket stays straight. Which way does this go? Whoop, a bunch of oil starts dumping out. Stupid gloves stuck in everything. Watch your fingers, because that magnet really sucks this down. Alignment pins lined up. As soon as you start once you get this close, the magnets magnetize together, you know. There we go. Drop down. Appears that our gasket has stayed in place. Just double check, make sure our gasket is in fact in place. Looks pretty good. Now we got two different size bolts that go around this cover, short ones and long ones. So what I'm going to do is find which holes the short ones screw into first, and through process of elimination I will be able then to figure out which ones the long ones go into. Now, let's see here. What did we say? 10 foot-pounds? Let's try that. They're pretty small, so you don't want to torque them too much. Even 10 might be too much. Yeah, I think 10 might be a little too much. Let's go down to 7. I don't know how accurate this torque wrench is at 7, but turn enough bolts in your life, you start to get a feel for it, I guess. I'm just kind of going around kitty corner, I guess. Alright, now we put this piece back on. This is for your recoil starter. Splines, push it down. I think you need this big thick washer. So you got your bolt, crank bolt, locking washer, and your big thick washer. So there we are, it's all put back together. Now I totally expect you should be able to do this with without taking the engine out, but I have some other things going on, so that's why mine's out. It's really not too bad of a job, you know. You just, when you're putting that timing chain on, you really got to make sure that you get it on there correctly. You know, you don't want it off a tooth. It might not run right, or you might end up hitting the valve to the piston. You know, you take your time with those piston rings if you're doing a top end. Make sure you get them all clocked right, and don't put them on upside down. You know, mine, I think it's going to run pretty good. I can hardly pull this cord here, so it's got a lot of compression. Of course, I don't think I was really having a big issue with it beforehand. I just wanted to go through it, you know. Being an 87 and it's probably been beat on, I wanted to make sure everything was in good shape, especially that crank in there, before I take it up north on the trails, because, you know, that'd be pretty crappy to drive all the way up there and finally get everybody's schedules aligned and then just break down right away. So, you know, good thing to go through it. So I guess that's going to end this video. I'm going to do another separate one about changing the clutches. That should be a pretty quick and easy video, hopefully. I've never done it before on one of these. Most of my experience is with a blaster engine as far as these motorcycle style engines go. And I had a Warrior 250, which that engine is quite similar to this one. Of course, that one has a automatic or semi, I don't know what you want to call it, has an automatic clutch. So, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.